Let's dumb it up. So, hi, I'm Elizabeth Lembke. I'm the Chief Talent Navigator at Transforming Talent, and I am happy to welcome you to this session, our first session, which is Let's Dumb It Up. So, this is the session out of the question, can transformation be memeable? And we do have our first meme, and our first meme comes from Anne-Cécile Graber, which is there's no need to be smart all the time. It's okay to be dumb. All right, so what are we getting at here? What we're getting at in the first session of the Amaze 2022 Transformation Passport is goal setting. How are we putting up goals that are actually meaningful and impactful and will make a difference in the world and in our lives, in what we're trying to do through the work that we're accomplishing and through the need of transformation. And so that's why it's important to dumb it up. So let me break it down for you. All right. So most of you know or have experienced, gone through the hardships that is setting goals via the SMART method. Okay. Anybody, everybody. Okay. So SMART, this came around it started in the 60s by George Doran. And it really came in with an article later on where it was trying to take the research by Locke and Latham from goal setting theory and say, how can we make this really snappy, relevant, and also that there is focus. So nothing wrong with that. Focusing on goals as to, why are they important and what will the impact they need to have? How will this play out? No arguments there. And actually, if you look at some of George Doran's original work, he was much more expansive and wasn't as supply chain command and control as how the SMART method has now lived out in most organizations and performance systems, etc. And so this is why this video around can transformation be memeable, going after what is the principle behind the idea and why is it relevant, that's why we're taking on SMART goal setting at the get-go. Okay. So as we look to the SMART methodology, let's break it down. The first one is S for specific. So specific is, this is that aspect of here, if you're narrowing the goal completely before you even get started, how are you going to integrate information that's counter to that? I'll just say melting icebergs as a prime example of it's not the data that we wanted, and so we're not looking at it. So here, um, quite often around these specific goals, what happens if it's not connected to strategy? What happens if it's not connected to anything anyone cares about or needs? Maybe it's something that HR thinks is important, but if you ask people, do you need this? Is this a problem for you? They'll be like, no, I really couldn't give 2 cents about XYZ because it makes no difference in terms of how I'm leading my life or getting my work done. So this aspect of specific, if it is running counter to what you actually need to be doing, or that will actually make an impact to whatever you're trying to accomplish, this is the problem with the S around specific, because it's similar to that quote from Stephen Covey where he says, it's incredibly easy to work harder and harder at climbing the ladder to success, only to discover that it's leaning against the wrong wall. So if the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step that we take will only mean we'll rise to the top of the wrong place faster. Okay, so this is that aspect around being specific as, is it even relevant? Is it something that you really even need to be working on? The next one in M is measurable. And so this is based in the philosophy of what gets measured gets done. And this is where I would challenge this to say, is everything that's important and impactful, meaningful, measurable? And are you going to find the right measure for it? So I remember when I came into one of my companies as a new employee, I got the KPI handbook. It was seriously 100 pages every month of the key performance indicators. Whereas I immediately said, how can they be key if we can't even agree on what is important for measuring the impact of the business? The other aspect is that quite often these are lagging. These are things that have happened, but they're not prognostics in terms of where are we going? How are we, how will this really be helping us guide our behaviors towards that impact? So that aspect of measuring is the first one of how exactly are we choosing those indicators to measure, and is it really relevant for what we're trying to do, or does it in fact put blinders on? I'll just give a couple of examples out of HR. So, for example, training hours has no, everyone measures it, everyone does it, every LMS that you have is going to be measuring training hours. And while that's interesting in terms of effort, how have we put it out there, it doesn't actually answer that question of what's the return on impact, what's the return on implementation from those trainings. Another one, full-time equivalent. I'm sorry, has anyone come into the 2022? We have all sorts of work. There's people on our payroll, there's people off of our payroll, there's gigsters, there's consultants, there's Fiverr. So here, if we're measuring everything out of full-time equivalent, we're not seeing the opportunities out of what is that work that is being accomplished by a community for your organization. Another one of my favorite is, applicant tracking systems. They always tell you how many applicants, okay? But it doesn't necessarily tell you the quality of the applicants. So there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of, thanks to LinkedIn, quick apply. There's a lot of things to sort through. So the numbers are there, but are they the right caliber and quality of candidates? And how are we converting those candidates? So you see here what we're trying to get at when we're talking about measurable as also putting blinders on is quite often there's historical, this is something that we've always done, this is something that we've always looked at, rather than saying we need to take these things off of the pedestal and say, are they relevant? Are they actually helping guide our work? So here, what do we need to do so that we don't, again, back to the iceberg, ignore the data points that really have impact? The next one, assignable. All right. So one of my old former bosses used to say, who do I need to fire if this goes wrong? Okay, there's a couple of things that are really challenging about that statement, but what he was trying to say is who's responsible for it? Because we know diffusion of responsibility, et cetera, law of the commons, but, but, when is anyone in an organization individually responsible for the success and failure of an objective? So this aspect of, is it assignable, is that piece around who's perhaps driving it, who's looking towards it, but it cannot be forgotten, and this is what oftentimes happens, is that I am going to fight my way for my goal because it's my goal, and I don't care about the losses or what it means for your goals. And so this is the challenge with assignable in terms of there's never just one person looking after an objective. It's always a collective. So how are you getting that collective involved is that aspect around assignable. And the next one is realistic. And so there was actually recently in 2021 a study done by Intelligence IQ, who looked at SMART goals in terms of how are they being implemented and what are people making choices around, and did people feel like the goals that they're choosing actually make a difference and a really a visible difference in their impact, and help them to achieve great things. And unfortunately, most of them said no. Um, and this is a key point here, most of them, 53%, said that they chose goals that are realistic and achievable. Huh, just like the model. Yay! Only not yay. If we look at, some of the most, how are people making impacts? How are businesses having impact? They're making really risky, audacious, brave, difficult goals that are going to challenge them, that are going back into that desire of what are we trying to achieve with our impact of what we're doing. So this aspect of being realistic is a big challenge to how are we stretching ourselves and giving ourselves stretch goals, because and it's kind of like that aspect of and what Professor Scott Galloway says when he says, be innovative, don't monkey with my profit margins. Okay, so this is where that plays in. The final one is this aspect of time bound. And now I know that everybody is going to tell you, how are you creating habits? What are you doing? How is that time bound? But the thing is, how are you actually realistically making a time assessment? I don't know about how your LRP plans are in your organization, but quite often when I see long range plans, it's amazing how everything is happening within the next 1 to maybe tops 3 years, but anything between 3 to 5 years, it is a crystal ball, and it is everything's always front loaded. And as we know, with every budget, as soon as it's done, as soon as we have version 7 that we've actually delivered, it's already overdue. So this aspect of what is that time bound and how are we paying attention to what's important, and not giving ourselves a vicarious goal such as December 31st, which as a performance manager, 98% of all the goals that I looked at were always magically done on December 31st. So this aspect of really understanding what is that time constraint that we're giving ourselves, but also what is that time to impact that we need to pay attention. So as we think through those smart indicators and the SMART method, this is where there is an opportunity to say, how can we take a dumb approach? And when I say dumb approach, this is inspired by the discussion we were having with the setting sail on your Amaze journey, where Anne-Cécile Graber, one of my co-creators and the boson on this journey, said there's no need to be smart all the time. It's okay to be dumb. And what she's getting at that is that aspect of, here there's desire. What are we going after? What does that impact to be have? What is that meaningful why as to what we're trying to accomplish? The second one, in terms of you, is the unraveling. So there's going to be new information coming in. There's going to be new data. There's going to be aspects that come together and come to light, as well as, hello, we're in 2022. The last 2 years have taught us that you cannot say, when's the date we're going to go back to work. So this aspect of how are things unraveling and how are we dealing with the new information that we have and integrating, that's what we're looking at when we're looking at the you in terms of unraveling, that there's going to be that nimbleness needed to be able to make better decisions based upon the new situation that we're in. And that goes to the M. The M means it's messy. All right. So I like to say learning happens in the wobble. It's that feeling of I'm going outside of my comfort zone. I'm going into that brave zone of learning of the first time, feeling that heat of development. And I don't know. The M of being able to deal with the messy is so important as we look to how are we dealing with ambiguity and paradox. And so this M around the messiness, this is that key part of dumb. And the final one is the B, balance. How are we finding a balance? So this comes into that play of there's a crosswaters, there's a juxtaposition when we're looking at our viability as a productive employee, as someone who's really making impact, finding fulfillment at work. That is our viability and also our employability, our ability to work. The next piece of that crosswater is our vitality, meaning our health, our wellness, our well-being. Here, the the pounds that we put on, whatever it is. So this aspect of what is our vitality and our health. And the third piece is our vulnerability. So these past 2 years have really taught us how vulnerable we are. We have grieved, we've had challenges, not only due to COVID, but also due to social unrest, etc. And that takes a toll. And quite often, people only look, or measures like McKinsey look at what is that economic impact of the the viability of our employees and completely ignores the other two aspects of our vitality and our vulnerability. So, how are we looking as leaders, as people practice professionals, as organization developers, huh, heck, also as individuals around that be balance? How are we helping people maintain some semblance of even kilter as they make their way through this amazing journey that we are all collectively on? Okay, so this is why when we're talking about there is a different way, it's important to take a dumb approach. This is that aspect of how do we need to reimagine the possibilities that are in front of us and create an orientation point that is aspirational and is also sane. Okay, so with that, that is our very first entry around can transformation be memeable. Thank you, Anne-Cécile, for bringing in so well. I'm going to put the video of her right here. And again, thank you. We are excited to be here, being on this Amaze 2022 Transformation Passport. Should you want more information, you can find it on transformingtalent.co or .de. Es geht ja natürlich auch auf Deutsch. And we look forward to seeing you on our next Ports of Call. All right. Thanks, everyone.